of the Bible, or the non-veracity or the truthfulness, is borne out by the fulfillment of those prophecies.
The following passage describes how God will declare the future before it happens, so that when it happens, it is clear that this is His Word and He is the true God. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 46, we read, "Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times the things which are not yet done. Yea, I have spoken it, and I will also bring it to pass. I have proposed it, I will also do it."
We believe that the Scriptures are the inspired Word of God. We believe that the words that are in the Bible are not just John's words. They're not just Peter's. They're not just Paul's or Matthew or Isaiah or Moses. They are the words of God. They came from the mind, from the heart, from the foreknowledge of God.
The book of Daniel is written in the late 500s before Christ. And yet when you study the book of Daniel, you begin to see the specifics of a fantastic prophecy. He talks about a massive empire that will come into being, and how that empire will be divided into four, and that empire will be led by what they call a strident, strong he-goat from the west, who will be marching several nations underfoot, but shall be suddenly cut off, and his empire will be divided into four. Those four then emerge into two, and those two blend into one. When you take the book of Daniel, written late 500s, and put it pro forma onto Alexander the Great in the 300s before Christ, you see the stridency of Alexander suddenly cut off in his 20s. Four kingdoms emerge given to his four generals. Those four come into the two, the Ptolemaic and the Seleucid empires, that emerge then into the Roman Empire. Centuries before, to be so specific in prophecy.
The book of Daniel, written 537 BC, shows the supernatural origin of the Bible. Dr. Chuck Missler stated the following: "What makes the book of Daniel particularly striking is that it also portrays in advance the subsequent Greek and Roman empires, and even highlights the career of Alexander and the four generals that succeed him after his death. The book of Daniel traces the course of world powers from his own day to the second coming of Christ." The book of Daniel describes future empires. "And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Thou, O king, sawest and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. And after thee shall arise another kingdom, inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things." The book of Daniel describes the four major world empires. First we have Babylon, the head of gold. Then we have the arms of silver, which is the Medo-Persian Empire. We have the belly and thighs of brass, which is Greece. And then we have the two legs of iron of Rome. Many scholars believe the representation of the iron and the part of clay at the feet of the image represents the re-emergence of the Roman Empire, while others believe that it is a world empire of 10 regions. But what is clear is the Bible predicts a world government through this book, and also the book of Revelation, showing how there would be a new world order upon the earth, a new world order that would destroy, but first would promise peace. Further details of these empires are given in Daniel chapter 7 and chapter 8. These testify of the amazing specificity of the book of Daniel, and how centuries before these empires came on the earth, the Bible predicted them. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel, after which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, and northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west, on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great, toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. Here we see the amazing prophecy, centuries before it occurred, of the fall of the Medo-Persian Empire to Alexander the Great.
Daniel 8 is a detail now on the Persians and the Greeks. And the ram is defeated by the goat. There's a rapid goat coming from the west. It's clearly, it's a very vivid description of Alexander's conquest of the Persians. And this notable horn, namely Alexander himself, is killed, and 4 generals divide up the empire. And there's a little horn that has a key role at the end. That's going to be important later. And Daniel interprets this for us. A leader from the west, obviously Alexander the Great, will subdue the Medo-Persian Empire. The 1-horned goat was the symbol of the ancient Macedonians. In Aries, the ram is the symbol of Persia. Capricorn, the goat, symbol of Greece. And in May 334, he crossed the Hellespont with 35,000 troops and first defeated the Persians at the Granicus River. And then a year later, he finds himself at the Battle of Issus and wins that one. And the final big one was Gaugamela, October 331 BC, which establishes the Greek Empire as the dominant guys of the block here. When Alexander dies, shortly thereafter, he makes Babylon his capital. He finally dies. He goes by the way, he conquers all the way to India. And Cassander takes the western part. The 4 generals divided up. Lysimachus takes Thrace, Bithynia, and most of Asia Minor. Asia Minor being what we think of as Turkey. Ptolemy takes the south, Egypt, Cyrene, and part of Arabia. And Seleucus takes the east, Syria, and lands to the east, all the way to India, but much of that's hard to hang on to.
The ram which thou sawest, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation.
And this notable horn, namely Alexander himself, is killed, and 4 generals divide up the empire.
In Revelation 19:10, it attests to the fact that for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. The fact that prophecy is true, the fact that 30% of the Bible is prophetic, the fact that the Bible predicts events before they occur shows that the Bible is true. While there are many prophecies that attest to the fact that the Bible is truly God's word and proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt, none should be more evident to the world than the return of Israel to its land in 1948.
Many prophecies in the Old Testament that said that the Jews, the children of Israel, would be kicked out of Palestine, they would be scattered all over the whole face of the world, and that everywhere they would go they would be despised and persecuted and hated of all nations. Well, in 70 AD, a Roman general called Titus went in to put down an insurrection in Jerusalem. He slaughtered about 1 million Jews. The rest were scattered all over the whole face of the world, hence the wandering Jew. And everywhere these people went, they were despised and persecuted and hated. And that culminated in the Holocaust in Germany in the Second World War, when millions of them were murdered. But there's many, many other prophecies that say in the last days, in the last generation, that God would regather his chosen people, Israel, and establish them in Palestine again. And he would do this as a sign to the rest of the world that we were in the last days.
And like even back, as I think it was like, you know, if you look at old accounts before 1948, the thoughts of the Jews returning to their homeland were seen as ridiculous at that time.
2,000 years, almost. You've got these people coming from all over the world into Israel in 1948. Now, 48 was when they became a homeland, but prior to that, they were all there. From the end of the war, from 45 on, you know, they were there, and we all know what happens. You know, the British pull out, and, you know, a nation becomes a nation in a day. It's kind of bizarre after 2,000 years.
And in fact, in one prophecy, I think it's in Jeremiah, it said that they would become a nation in one day. And that literally happened, because back in May of 1948, the British went into the UN with a proposal that the Jews be given their own nation state. It was seconded by the United States of America, and literally in one day, Israel became a nation again, and they were given back their old homeland of Palestine, and they went back in. Now, irrespective of the rights and wrongs of what's happened with the Jews and the Palestinians and Arabs at that time, the point is that prophecy is being fulfilled. In 1948, after almost 2,000 years of a worldwide scattering, the Jews are back in Israel. Now, I have a book in there written by a fantastic scholar called E.W. Bullinger, and he lived about 100 years ago, and he wrote in his book that when we see the Jews returning to Israel again, returning to Palestine again, we will know that we're in the last generation. And he wrote that some 40 years before they came back. This man was, because he knew his Bible.
If you believe in the prophetic time clock, and I do, I believe that the only way you can look, we as Christians can factor anything in at all, is you got to look at Israel. Israel's the key. Israel is the key. The prophecies hinge around Israel.
Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. These prophecies are even more remarkable when one realizes that the population of Jerusalem was only about 9,000 in the early 1800s and about 60,000 in 1905.
Well, a cup of trembling. I mean, what a stupid remark. I mean, you know, what's that about? I mean, what a ridiculous statement to make. You know, and scoffers at the Bible have pointed to that and go, please, Jerusalem, a cup of trembling of the whole world? Let's take it literally. Let's look at that 500 years ago. Let's look at it during the Crusades 1,000 years ago. Not to the whole world, it wasn't a cup of trembling, was it? Not to the whole world, in a literal sense. And I'm a literalist, unfortunately. But when it says the whole world, Jerusalem today is a cup of trembling to the whole world.
In Israel, there's 6.5 million of them there. World peace is contingent upon what happens in that little narrow neck of the woods. It's only the same size as Munster. You know, about a quarter the size of Rhode Island. And so when we switch on the news at night and we see trouble in Israel between the Palestinians and the Jews, or the Iranians or the Lebanese and the Jews, we are watching that prophecy coming to pass.
The United Nations has condemned Israel more than 370 times. Never condemned the Arabs for attacking them. They've condemned the Jews for defending themselves. I mean, it's incredible. The whole world is against them. And God said, I will make them a cup of trembling. And this is the number one problem that the United Nations faces today. Everybody knows it. The United Nations has spent 1/3 of its time in deliberations and pronouncements about Jerusalem and Israel. This little land that has 1/1000th of the world's population. They spent 1/3 of their time on it.
Yet today, world peace rests on the shoulders of this tiny region.
these 66 books we call the Bible are actually penned by over 40 people over almost 2,000 years that are an integrated message, and that's a technical term. It's not just that there's a theme in the Old Testament, fulfill the New, more than that. We now discover that every detail, every number, every place name appears to be in there by design. And you have to discover that for yourself. But once you do, it changes your whole perspective. I've had to, obviously, over a 6